Hello and welcome to TableTalk Friday, your weekly dose of D&D banter between three lads in a bedroom. If you like their style, make sure to follow them on whichever podcast service you prefer and come back every Friday for another upload. Now, back to the boys.
Yeah, I
love drafts.
I haven't done many drafts.
Yeah. But I recall there were some good ones, especially in Lanky Eric's campaign. When we went to whatever the name of the island was, but to the tuning exams.
It was the tuning exams. But it was the tuning exams for the Avengers, which I never thought of before. But it was literally, we went through the Naruto second arc tuning exams for Antonio Starkovian. Think about that.
Definitely not Iron Man.
Which is well, he wasn't Iron Man. He had a floating chair though.
No.
Oh no, we did see his Iron Man suit too.
Yeah, you did in a one-off,
Yeah.
but you didn't put two and two together.
Why would I?
That
Why would
Antony Starkovian was Iron Man.
Oh.
Who would have guessed? Well, and then
But
there
it
was Daredevil too.
But you know what? It was so much fun.
Yeah.
That was a good one-off.
I wish I got to play in that, and I wish I had done the one-off where everyone was invited to be like Spider-Man or.
Oh,
Captain
I wasn't
America.
in that either.
I wanted to play in that. so
Yeah,
bad.
no, that was just me, Ryan, and Ben, I want to say.
Well, Eric's, of course.
Yeah, so
Ben,
yeah,
Ryan,
cut that
Eric.
part out. Cut that part where I said it was me, Big Eric, and Little Eric.
That works.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's fine, you know, big and little Eric.
Make an intelligence save to see if you remember that.
I don't have a
Roll the
die
dice right now. No, it's the audience.
Oh,
the audience is making saves right now.
I bought the Laeral Silverhand, like, her
Little starter
Explorer's
pack
kit.
kind of a thing.
It's like the Laeral Silverhand's Explorer's kit, and it comes with a set of massive dice. Like, well, the dice themselves are small, except for the 2d20s, which are like this big.
Which is cool.
And they roll great. I already tested them. But it has a bunch of key figures from Waterdeep. Like Durnan is in there, and it has like little descriptor cards for them. So that way, if like I have a new player getting to know this character, here's a little descriptor card to tell you what they look like and who they are. There it is. Also has a map of the Sword Coast, which is very nice, and it's a player-friendly map. So there's not like spoilers on it like there was for the Storm Kings one. Because Drew was telling me, I still don't know what the Sword Coast looks like.
Nope.
And I was like, okay, well, I don't really have a map I can show you that wouldn't spoil everything. And then now I have this, and I showed him, I was like, here's the Sword Coast and what it looks like. It doesn't have things like Amphael and things on there because those are like the small cities on the way. But like all the major cities, you know, Waterdeep, Neverwinter, Baldur's Gate are all on there. Red Larch is on there. 10 Towns is on there. And then it has pictures and descriptions of these locations. So, I can show you a picture of Neverwinter and go, this is the fucking city you're in! I don't have to describe the bridge that goes from one side to the other with the giant cliff in the middle. I can just go, that's what it looks like! And show it to you.
For me, it's not where we're going. It's like, name the town. Okay, Tribord. Oh, the Barge Right In. I know about that. I know where that is.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're going to Winterhaven. I have no idea where that is.
Yep, I have no
don't
clue.
know. But when we get there, I know there'll be a certain shop there.
No, that's fair. And like you guys would know, if you went to Icewind Dale, you would know how to get that one bar that you went in Bryn Shander, but you'd have no clue what Bryn Shander looks like. It's like, okay, we went to a set of gates, and we went to one single blacksmith, and then we left. We traveled for weeks.
Oh, Everland? Do you mean Magic Town? Oh, yes, I know that place.
I know where Magic Town is. That's where Felgalos crash landed.
Ooh. Oh, Felgalos was so fun, man. We could do a whole episode on Felgalos.
Well, I anticipate telling a lot of Felgalos stories just because I like Felgalos a lot as a character. I don't know if he's actually in like Forgotten Realms lore outside of Storm King's Thunder, or if he's like an iconic character. But I know he's like written in some places here and there.
I don't think he's like crazy, like famous, if you will. I've heard of like big ones like Tiamat, like the gods and stuff.
Well, yeah,
I've never heard of Felglos in any other sense.
Well, no, sometimes though they will do like just a little bit of cross-referencing, like, oh, well, there's this character in this module, and then it just so happens that it shows up in this other place. So,
right.
For example, I like talking about this one. There's the dragon from Dragon of Icespire Peak that also is in Storm King's Thunder.
Yeah.
Cryovane is the same dragon in there and there. So if your
But
players
isn't
are...
Cryovane younger in the Dragon of Icespire Peak and older in Storm Kings?
I believe so. And in either case, if you're playing through it, you're probably going to kill him in either location.
Oh, poor Cryovane.
Yeah, it depends on your continuity.
Yeah, so... but you gotta watch out for that, I guess, if you're running both.
How does it feel to be the warm-up dragon?
Could you imagine going through Icespire Peak but having already killed Cryovane in Storm King's Thunder, or vice versa? You go to the place where he's supposed to be in Storm Kings and there's nothing.
Well, yeah, as a very unprepared DM, I'd just be disappointed.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be like, no, it's another white dragon. Bryovane.
Brian Vane. His name, but he goes by Brian.
Brian the dragon.
Well, all of a sudden, that's my favorite character. I wish we ran into Brian.
I would actually be disappointed as a player in that situation, I think.
Yeah.
Because I would be like, well, we already killed a white dragon. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah,
that's
what
I don't
I'm
want to
saying.
fight another white dragon. I already got one.
Mm-hmm.
But I would be thrilled entering a dungeon or a cave or something, and the big boss is just a dragon named Brian or Bill. Bill the dragon. Like how intimidating is that? Like, I wouldn't want to fight him anymore. He would win.
my horde. Did you want anything? You can't have it.
You can keep it, Bill. It's okay.
Okay.
We'll be back.
Okay.
Well, yeah, the thing about sapphire dragons is they all have human names.
You're spoiling our fist-based review!
Spoil-
That we haven't done yet! Cut the episode! Cut the episode! Cut it out!
That was the sound of Seth turning off the recording.
Got an old computer, man.
Cut the episode.
I really hope your laptop doesn't make that noise.
No, what is it? It's I guess it's like a slit noise. I don't know.
Oh, we gotta get one of those
Snip,
those cutscene clappers. Little.
Oh,
we
like
should
the
get
little
one of
scene
those.
things, like
Yeah.
scene 1.
I don't know what those are called.
I'm pretty sure it's just a clapper.
Scene clapper. I'm gonna call it a scene clapper. Sounds a little obscene though.
Yeah. Anyways, our adventure begins in dungeons.
Woo!
All right. Welcome to episode one of them of Table Talk Friday, because I don't know what order these are coming out in. But this week
9.
we would like to delve into some dungeons a little bit. Go through some of our favorite dungeons that we've done before. Some encounters you can run in your dungeons, as well as, kind of what you just put in them. Whether it's like a random dungeon, a dungeon that's written in your campaign that you're required to run because it says so, or etc. Literally anything else. How are you boys doing today?
I'm doing great, Seth. And just by the way...
Thanks, Seth. Thanks for tossing it over to me.
The prep for that was golden.
No, that was great.
It was a wind up for that.
Well, I just love dungeons. So I'm so glad that we get to talk about them today.
Your tone of voice is getting me, dude. It's so good. This is tip-top quality content.
I actually love dungeons so much, I personally have the dungeon delving feat with me right now.
What's it do?
It helps me get through traps, and you have advantage on detecting traps and get resistance to damage.
So the
probably.
idea of dungeons is very broad. We're very aware of that. That's why there will be multiple episodes based around dungeons in general. But I kind of just want to discuss, dungeons in general. There are a couple of, base ones that I've run through, but I think I personally run dungeons differently than a lot of DMs do. I usually just throw a bunch of things together and let the players discover what they do along the way. Typically, I'll just draw up a dungeon or come up with something on the fly, unless my module gives me something so. But typically, modules don't give you all the details necessary for running a dungeon, or at least for the ones that I've seen so far, such as Storm Kings and Descent into Avernus. Those are the ones I'm, more versed in running. A lot of times I'm given very minimal information except for the main plot points, and with the 4 dungeons they provide me in Descent into Avernus, I can say quite thoroughly that I'm going to be running many more than that. Are you counting right now, Zach?
I feel like we've only been through 3.
2 or 3 dungeons, so far.
So...
They don't give me exactly 4.
Wait, there was only 4 dungeons and I missed one?
What do you mean?
So
What do you mean?
I missed the floaty place.
No, there's not actually only 4. I was just saying there aren't very many. It was an exaggeration.
I was gonna say, I want a dungeon delve, man.
No, so, honestly, when it comes to dungeons, there's a couple of key things that I think are necessary to run a good one. A boss encounter, some sort of big encounter that you do, preferably near the end. A couple of items for adventures to pick up. Not that items are necessarily like necessary to have and go through, but I feel like having some treasure or something available to pick up makes the dungeon delve worthy, whether it be actual treasure, gold, or a big lore piece, something that leads you to the next leg of your campaign.
And to speak on that just a little bit, I do think that, just a side tangent, dungeons are probably my favorite place to put magic items.
Yeah.
If you're going to put them into your campaign, I always feel just some sort of way about having magic item stores where your players go to the supermarket and say, yes, a arrow catching shield. That's what I'd like to purchase. Well, you're in luck, traveler. I just happen to have any magic item that you could want for the price. It works out a little bit better in my mind if, as a DM, you just get to weave the magic items that you find into the story.
Yeah.
I remember one time when I was running Curse of Strahd, there was a particular magic item. Seth had told me, I kind of want something that's like a circlet of blasting. And I was like, okay, well, there's not a circlet of blasting in Curse of Strahd, but, well, there is this, evidence of, like, dead adventurers in this dungeon. And I'm thinking, well, what might a dead adventurer have if not for a couple magic items? So I went ahead and threw it in there. It was a flavored circlet of blasting.
An armlet of blasting,
yes.
Which was just Buzz Lightyear's laser, and I fucking loved it. It was just Buzz Lightyear's laser on my wrist, and I was over here like all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
And then you turn invisible and
so,
Buzz Lightyear laser.
Yeah,
Strahd.
little side tangent here. We got to the boss battle with Strahd, and I had just taken Elven Accuracy, which lets you make ranged attacks, and basically with triple advantage. So I had greater invisibility. I turned invisible, and then just used this armlet of blasting, and had triple advantage on every shot against Strahd, and just roasted him. It was amazing.
Roasting Strahd. We could do like a cookbook.
Strahd's favorites.
Well, they've already done that. It's called Heroes Feast, and I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
purchased it,
Good
and
spell, too.
I never will.
Yeah, but they need to do like favorite meals from Barovia, and then they have the kid pie thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Kid pie.
Well, just imagine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
They're called Dream Pies, actually.
Yeah,
That's in the book.
Yeah,
Dream pie.
Strahd's a very cool campaign.
Playing it. Jumping back to the, you were talking about putting magic items in dungeons and it being a little bit more, I don't know, rewarding or just feels better for you as a DM. I would agree because giving your players magic items just on the fly seems like, this is a plot item, I designed it for you, like, here you go. You didn't earn it. But if you go through a dungeon, you fight a dragon, and it's in his hoard or something like that, it just feels so much better. You fought for it, you got it, you earned that magic item rather than, I got couple gold coins and here DM, give me that item I want really bad. I think there's something about it that's very rewarding. Especially if you put it behind secret doors.
Well, yeah, and it's also a good place to put like custom magic items and things, unless your character creates it themselves. But like, I agree with you guys. Finding magic items in a dungeon on a boss specifically can work well too. Like the boss wields the magic item and then you take it from him when you murder him.
Yeah, which also just makes any monster that you just happen to throw like a +3 robe of the Archmagi or whatever.
Yeah.
You throw that on them. That's a lot more threatening than just a regular Archmage that we're fighting. Now all of a sudden they've got a +3 to their AC, and they also have a Staff of Power. And ultimately the players getting that kind of power is it'll bite you in the ass eventually. But for that one encounter, your players are going to be shitting themselves.
Yeah, or your players go through an entire dungeon and they meet a shield that talks and has the voice of a devil.
That would never happen.
And then you grab it and you take him along with you for your entire campaign, which is great. But and it might bite you in the ass later or something. But realistically, having big pieces of treasure like that in dungeons that could be good things, could be bad things. Maybe you go into a secret death temple and find a cursed magic item. Either way, yeah, having those big rewards at the end of dungeons is always like your favorite part because you're like, I actually worked for this. You know, I made it through this whole thing. I fought like teeth and a limb to get all the way here, and finally I got rewarded with 100 gold and a staff or a rod of lordly might.
Oh,
Yeah, and speaking honestly, sometimes that's the only reason to ever want to go into a dungeon.
I mean, honestly, yeah. Sometimes you could, as adventurers, well, we got to do a little side job right now to make some money and get some items. Let's go rob a crypt.
Yeah, or we can head back into the desert and go raid Imrith's lair and her horde.
Right.
After we kill her.
Yeah,
but we just go for the loot.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah. You finish, you kill a big bad or something like that. Well, what better than to go raid their horde next,
Mm-hmm.
or to go take out their watch post or whatever. Say it's like a 1 to 5, and you're taking out a castle of people, and you're like, oh well, we killed the big bad, but there's still a lot of rooms left in this place. I guess let's go check it out.
Yeah.
Speaking of big bads, I feel like you have to put a big bad in a dungeon. I feel like you just missed out on something if you don't. And I actually have a question for you guys, because whenever I make a dungeon, whenever I'm designing it, usually I theme it around the boss rather than making the dungeon and then picking a boss. I always kind of try to theme it, and like the traps and the rooms and the puzzles will all be based around that. I built a dungeon that was about a hag, or a number of hags. It was a coven, and so there were different rooms. There was a water room for the sea hag, and there was a room where you could grab by vines for the green hag, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And then there was like a nightmare room for the night hag. So do you guys pick your bosses before or after?
Well, if I'm making a dungeon, and that's the important part, then absolutely, that's always what I do. And usually I'll think of, okay, if I'm prepping a session, especially like a one-off, or I'm not exactly sure what the players are going to be doing, but I feel like we need to go into a dungeon now. I'll just flip through the monster manual and say, well, I haven't used an ogre yet. And then I think, okay, well, what can I, what traits does this ogre have, and why are they in this dungeon? All right, and then I'll build up from there. So yeah, absolutely. I think making it boss-centric is important, because ultimately your players might feel a little gypped if they get to the end of the dungeon and there wasn't a big fight, or there was something that it at least has to look like a big fight. Your players can steamroll the boss.
Oh, look, it's a clue to another dungeon.
Yeah.
Now I've got this amazing idea for a dungeon where, like, at the end they find like an IOU one boss fight, and it's just like the boss left a note and said, "Meet me here. Get your rest. You're gonna need it." But you go through the whole dungeon, you kill a bunch of guys off, and the guy's like, "Oh, I'm out of town. I wasn't there."
I would be so mad.
Thanks, Mario. But your boss is in another dungeon.
I actually feel like you wouldn't be that mad. I feel like you'd be happy to go in there and just get powered up.
No, I'd be mad. I want to fight something into that dungeon. I'm going in there to pick a fight with somebody.
Well, knowing your characters, though, Drew, you would die.
My character would die in most situations.
And that is something I want to say. There are some dungeons that are meant to be deadly, and there are some dungeons that are meant not to be deadly. For instance, I would like to go through two examples that I have from the Fandelver campaign. The Red Brand base, for one, it's a very early dungeon. I'm not going to give any specific spoilers or anything like that. Very well set up dungeon. There are a lot of guardsmen and creatures and stuff, and a lot of different paths you can use. I like being creative with that dungeon. I think there's a lot of different ways you can go about going through it. Very creative, very cool dungeon. Items, boss, all the things you want from a good dungeon. I don't think it's meant to be deadly.
No. No, not at all. In fact, I would go so far as to say you must be terrible at D&D if your character were to die in that dungeon.
But we lost 2 characters in that dungeon. And now this was close to the beginning of our D&D experience, but like...
Yeah, that was like session 3 for you?
Yeah, I think it was session 3.
Or maybe even 2, because
your
first session we met the Red Brand bandits and then
we went their second session. Mm-hmm. This was my second time playing D&D, folks, and we died.
You didn't die.
Well, no,
I died.
No, I started
for your sins.
I started as a great player, Zach. I rolled well in my death saves.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I don't think that dungeon is meant to be deadly, but you can run any dungeon in a way that it is. You know, you can upgrade the dungeon. You can change it to be deadly. You can change it to be a little too easy. Depends really on your players, what you've given them. If you allow your players to go to dungeons before they're ready for it or not. And then likewise, there's another dungeon called Wave Echo Cave. No spoilers once again, but you can very easily die in that dungeon, I believe. You know, there's a lot going on there. There's you're going to be fighting an awful lot of bugbears, different types of monsters. The boss, if he's not like zeroed in on and taken down, is going to be pretty tough on you. And then once you've beaten the boss, you have other bosses to fight. That was the pretty cool part I think about that though, is there were multiple bosses in Wave Echo Cave.
Yeah, and you know, I'm sure there's some planet on which you go into Wave Echo Cave and you turn them against each other. Yeah, and like you know, there's sort of there's an ecosystem to that dungeon, which I think is very awesome. That's the capstone dungeon for Phandelver, so it's good that it'd be good, but I really like I like that element of it, which I suppose. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off if you.
No, you're good. You're good.
All right. Well, so just talking about other inhabitants of your dungeon and sort of making it into an ecosystem. One dungeon that I've gone through that I think just thematically and like concept-wise got me super excited, and this is a big one, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which we did not go through all the way because we're not that type of D&D table. I would say we can't sustain ourselves on roll to hit and looting and fighting
roll
every
perception
session.
Around this corner, roll perception around this corner. Okay, roll investigation around this corner.
Yeah, we're not a dungeon crawler sort of table, I would say, typically. But what's really cool about Dungeon of the Mad Mage is there's so much shit going on in there. Like, it's a massive, sprawling world where any individual you find, you're not 100% certain if they're, in league with the big bad of the dungeon. Most people have never met the big bad of the dungeon.
But they live there.
Yeah, exactly. And at one moment, you might be finding some ruffians who are, trying to take travelers. For granted, you kill them, steal their shit, whatever. But then on the other hand, you might run into just a big forgetful stone giant who's just chilling out in the cave,
just there to hang.
Yep. Or you might find a whole city that's within this dungeon.
And I will say, as the DM of those sessions we have gone through, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, it's a very big place. I don't think I'll ever run that campaign front to back, but if you need some inspiration for your dungeon, just take whatever floor that corresponds with the level you're running at and say, oh, yeah, I'll run that one today. And then you can just reskin it and have it not be part of the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, have it be a part of your world, and it's going to work swimmingly. There's so much cool stuff as a part of those dungeons. The maps are beautiful. The traps are amazing in there. The different antagonists, protagonists, allies that you're going to find are really, really cool. Dungeon of the Mad Mage is super cool, and if you're looking for a little bit more advice other than what you're getting here, and I'm talking about, 200 pages plus of advice, check out Dungeon of the Mad Mage. It's super cool. We're not sponsored, though. Just so you know.
But we could be.
As Zach said, buy Dungeon of the Mad Mage. There's so much shit in here.
It's on the front of the book.
I'm pretty sure it was.
But no, I mean, not every dungeon needs to be something that you're going to need to, there are a lot of different ways to run them. You can be on a battle mat, and you can be writing, and I think that's a good next topic to go into, kind of how we specifically run our dungeons. Typically, if I'm running a dungeon, I will theater of the mind for a bit, describe everything you're seeing, read the blocks in the book if it is a module-run dungeon. Describe everything you guys see, let you delve into it a little bit. If you guys have questions or we start combat or the room is important, then that's when I pull out the battle map and the marker. I pull out the mat, I start drawing. I say, all right, everyone, have your RP time. Talk, grab a drink, 5 minutes of break, and I'm gonna go ahead and sit down and draw this map for a few seconds. And I'll draw a very simple sketch of the map, what's in it. Let the players ask questions when they have them, and continue on. That's sort of how I've noticed our consensus is sort of theater of the mind for a bit, and then when we need actual visuals, we make them ourselves. Mm-hmm. But there are other ways to do it too. Either of you have other examples of ways you run dungeons?
Well, yeah, so I'll say I love playing in person, and I think our table setup, it's great for 99% of the time. But if there's one thing that I think we're lacking in, it is dungeons. And the reason for that is there's no better way, in my opinion, to run a dungeon than on a virtual tabletop.
Yeah.
Because you have that freedom to have the whole map set up in front of you already, and then as the players progress, you just reveal more of it. And then you can even take away parts of the map that they're no longer in, so they can't see what's going on over there. It's just super immersive and really engaging, I think, as a player to have that sort of all laid out in front of you, rather than, okay, well, Seth's getting out the marker, so I know we're going to fight something pretty soon. It's when you have the virtual tabletop, and of course this involves a lot of prep on the DM's part too, either making your own maps, which or finding your maps online, which is what I typically prefer. And I'll even do that for dungeons that I'm making. I'll say, okay, well, I don't feel like drawing up a whole new dungeon map, so
in black and white with a computer screen marker.
Yeah, so I'll find something online, but I think that just works super well. The one other thing that I am jealous of people who have this ability to set this up, and it's a costly hobby, but like Dwarven Forge, 3D terrain.
Oh, I wish
that is made for dungeons.
Yeah.
And just having like a whole big setup. I mean, it's modular, so you can adjust it if you don't have enough space to map out a whole dungeon in 3D, but that's the dream, at least. I think that those are probably like physically.
Or like one of those like wormwood tables that's like caved in, so you can like build the dungeon out underneath and like cover it up with different spots. They have those, which are cool. They're like vaulted tables.
Yeah, or even a table where you've got a screen or a projector.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then
a virtual table. That would be cool.
And then you do it in a virtual tabletop, so
but
it's the same thing.
I do 100% agree with you that I wish I could pull up all of my maps on like a virtual tabletop screen and like show you guys slowly everything that you're going through. Because that is the most immersive way. I think the reason that I don't do as many like dungeon delves as the typical D&D party would is because we don't have those available. There was a time whenever I would do dungeon delves and draw out every single map, but that took me like 2 or 3 hours per map when I was in my prep. And if you know anything about me from our DM prep episode stuff, like how to be a good DM stuff, I don't fucking prep that much. I kind of just go into the session and start talking.
Yeah, no, I did that did I do it for? No.
You did it for a decent part of Strahd.
Yeah, just for one dungeon though, but it took me like 6 hours.
It takes a long time.
Draw out, and the way that I did that, it was janky. We were in college, so I just took a bunch of.
But it was a very good visual.
Oh,
you did a great job.
But I took wrapping paper.
Yeah.
And I just drew out the maps on that.
Because it has a 1-inch grid on the back, Drew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, and then I just cut out the pieces, and then, okay, well, here's my pile of first floor, second floor, third floor, and then as the players progress, I just, okay, well, I'll pull out my...
here's the staircase of this floor, put it down. Here's this part of this floor. Here's this room, boom.
And it was super cool because it's a very vertical dungeon, so as they're progressing through the space, I could just lay it down on top.
Yeah, he was like stacking them. It was so cool.
Yeah, sort of like Zelda, 2D Zelda.
Yeah.
It's got multiple levels. Anyway, I was super proud of that, but it took so much goddamn time. So I did not do that again for the other dungeons. I would have hated Castle Ravenloft. Trying to plot all that out, but
yeah, that would have been hell. But how cool would that be now to have that pile of Castle Ravenloft and be able to just throw it down whenever you want?
Yeah, well, and one thing that I have seen, there's a million ways to run dungeons, but I've seen people get creative with it too. Like, there's a post that I saw once where someone built all of Castle Ravenloft in Minecraft.
Oh,
and then
yes, I have seen that.
And then ran their players through it.
I've seen the same thing for
Minecraft.
Groothog. Yeah, all of Groothog built out.
Talk about prep.
Talk about a good dungeon, Groothog.
Well, that's a cool dungeon, but you guys only saw really the boss room.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, we took
that
the
that happened a good bit, but there was such good RP that session that I couldn't give one shit. Like if you made it straight to the boss room or not, you guys had like a solid plan. We're gonna go in and have a meeting with Guh and then just fuck shit up when we get in there.
Worked great till I died.
Yeah, well, you got revivified, so it's fine.
Yeah, it was fine. It was good.
And just speaking on my lasting trauma from that session, I was so scared because we had to pull that same take off your armor bit that got me killed
Yeah.
in the Red Brand base. But I did it. I took off all my armor because I had to go in invisibly, I believe.
Yes.
As opposed to everyone else. So I was just petrified. But luckily, well, yeah. Luckily, Eknon was there to take all of the hits.
All the hits.
It was a very cinematic encounter, though. Like I felt like at the end, especially when you guys were going for like the escape and everything. So, reference for you guys, for the listeners out there, we ran Storm King's Thunder. There's a giant base. I'm not gonna do any spoilers here or anything because you might hear these names if you're in the campaign. But basically, they burned the place down.
It was not on purpose.
It wasn't on purpose,
Definitely not on purpose.
but no one really got the reference. Or I described this entire place, which was basically like a massive brick and log cabin, but on giant scale. So it's humongous.
Who built something that big out of wood? You know someone's gonna burn that
Logs,
down.
please.
Come on, it's gonna get
like
burned
entire
down.
trees. So one of our players casts Fireball, burns the whole place down. So it's cinematic. Things are falling from the ceiling. Eknon's getting revivified. Everybody's retreating, and they kill the boss. It was very cool. But yeah, that was a very cool dungeon that my players walked right into the boss room. But it was also a setup for a lot of different lore bits. So not the worst thing overall, and it was an amazing session. I had a great time DMing it.
So, we've talked a lot about what we sort of do with dungeons, but just on a more personal note, what are our thoughts on dungeons? Because I know, as a player, personally, I sort of feel like I need a dungeon every once in a while. Just, I get super excited about them, but at the same time, if that were every session, I'd lose my mind.
I completely agree. I think dungeons for me are a sometimes food. Because it's like cake, you know. Cake is a sometimes food. It's not an everyday food. If you go into a dungeon every single session, my brain's gonna explode because while it's very fun to go in, find the treasure, and fight the boss, it's my least favorite part almost, I would say. Like, I love everything about D&D, but one of my least favorite things is slogging through a dungeon, a boring dungeon. Now, there are dungeons, like, I think when we played Salt March a few weeks ago, I think that dungeon was very fun because we were all getting to know each other's characters. It was our first, like, little bit of a dungeon. But say if we were going through a little house like that, and except, you know, different settings every session, I'd be like, okay, Cortelia's trying to break another lock. Great. I love this.
Almost did it.
No, I think dungeons are a sometimes thing where not every boss has to have a dungeon with it. Like, you can have a lot. I think the way we play especially is very RP heavy, very story heavy. Even when you guys do have multiple combats a session, it's usually situational. It's not usually dungeon delving. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But in a game called Dungeons & Dragons, I use dungeons maybe 15 to 20% of the time.
I would agree. I think dungeons have to be... It's all in the craft of them, right? They have to be special, equivalent to a boss. So when you think of a boss, you put a lot of thought into your boss. You have backstory, they have maybe a class, lots of abilities, maybe some magic items, things like that. You really think them through. I think the same has to be said for a dungeon. For me, I don't use dungeons a lot at all, but when I do them, I plan them for hours. I draw everything out. I jot down notes of it's here, and there's these people there, and this is the history, and the stones this color, and you need to know everything about the dungeons when you run them, because they should be evoking the same emotion that the boss battle does. When you go into a boss battle, you're not like, oh, I'm fighting the big bad dragon because it's like any old minion. No, you're going in because this dragon has murdered your family. This dragon has been ravaging the countryside for years, you know? When you go in that dungeon, you should be scared because there's ghosts floating in and out of the walls. You should be freaking out because you don't know where you are. It can be mysterious, it can be dark, there could be creepy underwater areas. It has to evoke that emotion, otherwise it's not really a dungeon.
You say all of that, but I'm going to be devil's advocate here because I run the game the same way as you do. As you know, I don't use them that often. But when I first started DMing, I DM'd like a homebrew little campaign, and I used this dungeon like every other session. I would sit down with graph paper and I would draw out the entirety of my dungeon. Sometimes they would be short dungeons, sometimes they would be long, but I think you can use like a side quest tiny dungeon, you know? It doesn't need to be like a big crazy thing, but I would use all of the elements, and I had a blast DMing this campaign. Now, was it what I would do exactly now? Probably not. But if I wanted to make I don't think it's incorrect to make a small dungeon or even a big dungeon for every single thing that they do. Like, say, if they are going to go find some miners in a cave, maybe right now, what I would do is send them in, they talk to a guy, go through a couple of rooms. I probably wouldn't spend multiple sessions on it. And fight a boss to get to release these, dwarven miners or whatever. But back then, what I would have done is, this would have taken the whole session. This would be you guys go in, you're going to go through multiple rooms, multiple different encounters. You got to be very careful not to set the alarm off, or else everybody's going to come charging towards you. And then you're gonna finally make it to the last room and fight this guy who really wasn't that strong to begin with. And I think there are multiple ways to do dungeons like that. I think you can run them more often than we do. But I agree with you that I think the way I would do it is dungeons are my big set pieces. They're not something that I'm using for every single side quest.
I would agree.
Yeah, and if anything, I think dungeons are perfect for one-offs.
Yes.
So if you're, just wanting to run one session of D&D, everyone makes characters for this one session, and then we're done. Story ends, we do not continue. That's always my go-to for one-offs is, okay, well, let me make a dungeon, and let me, put a boss in it. We'll have some cool special thing about the dungeon, and then, you'll just go through it. And that's perfect for, like, a small dungeon, because you want to wrap it up in, no more than 3.5 hours or so.
I think you're onto something there, because whenever I plan a one-off, which I think we'll probably have an episode on one-offs later, but when I plan a one-off, I usually have a very specific formula for it. It's some RP stuff at the beginning, a little RP situation, possibly a random encounter if that RP situation didn't go for very long, dungeon, boss, more RP. And then that's usually that same formula every time. So we'll probably delve into that a little bit more later, but yeah, I agree that pretty much every one-off I've done has had a dungeon involved.
I think it'd be a waste not to put one in.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to corral a couple players that have never adventured together before, it's their first time playing as players, not as the or the characters, I should say, not players. What better way to corral them all in one place than somewhere they can't escape? Trap them in your dungeon.
Now, you guys are in Avernus right now in your campaign. And while we haven't had a lot of dungeons, I feel like you've had a lot of set pieces in a row. Does that count?
Well,
is Hell one big dungeon? Because I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, you guys get very little time to rest unless you find a specific place, which you could do in a dungeon. You guys have gone set piece to set piece. You went from point, your teleportation point all the way to a small set piece where an encounter could happen, then to an encounter, and then straight to another encounter. I mean, while we don't use dungeons in the way that they're particularly described, I mean, you're kind of getting the same idea in Hell right now.
Yeah, I would agree that I think Hell is in essence a big dungeon with a bunch of different rooms that are spread out along long distances. And that's another thing that I was wanting to bring up is dungeons don't necessarily have to be dungeons like
catacombs or a graveyard or a big castle.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't necessarily have to be like an interior location. It can be a very large,
a big spooky forest.
Yeah, a whole spooky forest. abandoned town, even all of hell, if that's what the adventure calls for. So it really depends on the situation. One of my favorite dungeons that I've ever run through, and I'm sure I'll mention it in a story time at some point because I do love this story, was Thunder Tree, also from Lost Mines of Phandelver. It's a whole ass town, and there's a special twist about it, and I just love it. Also to that point, non-traditional dungeons are usually a lot more fun, I find, for my players. There are ways to incorporate all the things that you get in a dungeon: the exploration, skill challenges, combat, magic items, in non-traditional ways. So one of my favorite one-offs that I've ever run was in my homebrew setting, where I sent you guys off on the boat, and you went to go unearth this shipwreck. And that wasn't at all a traditional dungeon. You were on a boat in the middle of the ocean, but I set it up very much in the same way that I would set up a dungeon, where, it's not a trap that you run into, but here's this obstacle. There's jagged rocks, and all right, now you have to decide which path to take. The fog rolls in, and everyone has to make perception checks to stay on course, that sort of thing. And then at the end, you run into a big boss encounter. Yeah. And then you get the magic loot or, treasure. Or
and Broccoli Eric throws himself into the water and dies.
Yeah. Well, that's just par for the course.
Yeah, as expected.
I didn't realize that sharks like broccoli.
That's actually a little known marine biology fact for you there. Sharks do love broccoli.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah, I would know that as a music major.
I would have to say, as far as what qualifies as a dungeon goes, I don't think I would qualify hell, because it's too big. For me, a dungeon has to restrict or confine you to a certain extent. So a cave, you can't necessarily leave the cave. There's only so many paths you can go. Hell to me is too sandboxy. There's lots of places we could go, we just choose not to. I feel like the dungeon has to funnel you in a certain way. Not to say the dungeons can't be
I get it.
But it has to funnel you in a certain restrictive fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of arguments that can be made, because I could make the argument the Dungeon of the Mad Mage has connected to the Underdark, so is it a dungeon? But I get what you're saying, because if you classify Hell as a dungeon, then the Sword Coast is a dungeon, because there are cities in Hell, as there are cities in the Sword Coast. The material plane itself is infinite. Is it a dungeon because Hell is infinite? I get what you're getting at there, and I would agree with you that I wouldn't actually classify Hell as a dungeon. But I'm saying that the way we think of dungeons in our head, sort of like how we think of clerics as they always have to be holy people, or monks as they always have to have a god that they pray to or something instead of just being trained martial artists. We can think of dungeons in a way that okay, I might not have a dungeon in this session, but what do I have that's dungeon-like? Do I have a random encounter along the road? Do I have a set piece, What are my hook points for this session?
Speaking of random encounters, how do we use those? Because I will say, usually, especially in the pre-written modules, they'll for most dungeons, they'll have a random encounter table ready for you to pull up, or at least they'll encourage you to roll on the table in the DMG or what have you.
Yeah.
What do we sort of think about those? Because I have my own thoughts about random encounters. But...
So, I haven't run a lot of random encounters in dungeons, mostly because you guys handle the dungeons as I expect them to. But, for instance, if you decided to short rest or long rest in my dungeon, I'm probably going to roll a random encounter, because this is not a place you should feel safe.
Yeah.
I don't think you should ever feel 100% safe to the point where, you know what, now's a good time for a nap. I got a couple of cuts on me, and you know what? This is a good spot. I don't think you should ever feel like that in my dungeon. While you can feel like that in a dungeon, maybe your dungeon is Van Thamper Villa or something like that. That's somewhere where you could lock a door and sit down for an hour.
A little more of a hospitable environment.
Right, exactly. But I do think that in most dungeons, the odds are something is going to come across you if you try to take a rest, whether that's a pre-planned, quote-unquote, random encounter, or if that's a randomly generated random encounter, I feel like something's gonna stop you from being there for too long. Likewise, there could be random encounters in rooms. You could kind of have a system in your dungeon where, guards rotate shifts, and they may be in this room at any given time, or this room at any given time, and while they're in this room, the chef happens to be in here, and he's the random encounter instead. So the chef is in the kitchen instead of the guards, because the guards just left the mess hall. So random encounters don't always have to be, combat, but I think there can be a lot of kind of different interactions you can have in said dungeon. What are your thoughts, Zach?
Well, yeah, so you sort of touched on my thought. I don't love the idea of totally random encounters. It seems sort of like a relic of earlier D&D where it was all about fighting and leveling up and looting things. And so rolling just a random enemy to fight against. Oh, well, we found a vampire in the middle of this dungeon. Okay, well, why is there a vampire here?
Yeah.
I need, like, a vampire? Like, a whole-ass vampire? Like Dracula? You're saying Dracula's just hanging out in this room.
Well, yeah, that's how it was in original Strahd, right?
Yeah, sort of,
like
kind
original
of.
Ravenloft?
Yeah, there was definitely, so there was still the same plot to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Strahd did you could randomly run into Strahd once you actually get into the castle. But I'm talking about, like, just random encounters without any rhyme or reason that you sort of, that you roll up. For example, if you're in the middle of a cave and you say, okay, well, what are some cave encounters? Okay, I guess they'll run into a bear in here because that's what I rolled, or a behir, or whatever you call it.
Or if they roll all the highest number on whatever die you're rolling, they run into 3 bullets.
Yeah.
Or a young blue dragon. The things that they have on those random encounter tables where it's like, wait, you're telling me 2 adult and 1 ancient dragon are swooping down only because I'm level 17 here?
Yeah, that's sort of my thought is like, okay, well, we can do this.
1 ancient white dragon.
Poor Bill,
what?
Man.
Why is he here?
But I find if you randomly roll, and I have randomly determined encounters in the past, I feel like it, more than anything, it puts the DM on the spot to come up with something that makes sense, and it grinds the session to a halt a lot of the time. If you don't have something prepped that you understand, okay, well, the players are going to be this level of tired after this, and then they still have to get through the rest of the dungeon. I think random encounters leave some of the DM prepping to chance to an extent that you don't necessarily want to. So I prefer having pre-planned encounters that aren't guaranteed. So
I was gonna say the same thing. Instead of 20 random encounters that mean nothing, I'd prefer 6 planned encounters that I may or may not get to do, or like 6 planned random encounters.
Yeah.
So these 6 encounters are probably gonna happen, but I'm gonna do them random. Like, I'm gonna roll for which one happens now. So it's like, okay, there's still an element of chance here. Like, you might get the apprentice to the mage because he happened to stumble in this room, or you might get 2 or 3 guardsmen that happen to walk in.
That's fair. I think I'm gonna agree with the fact that it's more so pre-planned encounters rather than random rolls. I've never rolled for a random encounter. I don't really see much of a point in it. I feel like if you spend 10 minutes assuming we're talking strictly about dungeons here, if you spend 10 minutes planning a dungeon, you're gonna kind of know what's in there. You don't need to roll to, there's a owl bear in here. You know it's in your dungeon. You know it's hanging in this area. You have a general feel for the stuff that you created. If there's going to be an encounter for whatever reason, for me it's the players caused it, or it was set and going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? Or you can use it, I guess, as a third option. Let's say almost like a Hunger Games kind of a vibe. If the players are taking too long and they're hanging out in certain areas, or you want to move them to a certain area for whatever reason, whatever your reasoning may be, you can, you hear sounds in the holes in the wall of the cave, or something starts running down the hall behind them to kind of get them moving, But it's more so what they do caused those encounters. I'm not going to throw some random dragon out just because.
No, and I do understand what you're saying. I think that it is good to, have a good idea for what you're going through. But I'm going to disagree with you on the fact that I think that I want my dungeon to kind of feel alive in the fact that I don't want to know everything that's going to happen in my dungeon. I like the chance, and I like the fact that my dungeon can change under my nose. So, like, okay, what I was expecting was 4 skeletons to be here, but I had 4 pre-planned encounters, and now one of them's a Minotaur skeleton, and there's 2 necromancers in here trying to make it come alive, instead of being up in wherever they were supposed to be before. I think it makes D&D a more, interesting game in the fact that it's not all the way planned all the time.
Yeah, agreed. So I think random encounters definitely have their place, especially say, for example, your players got through the social encounter that you planned way faster than you thought they would, and now we're in the middle of the woods, but I didn't have the entirety of the dungeon prepped yet because I didn't think they'd get this far. Okay, well, the woods is a perfect place to throw in a random encounter, and you even have the freedom to say, okay, well, I didn't necessarily prep something here, but let me roll. And if you are good at thinking on the fly, you can say, okay, well, I got a dryad. Okay, well, that's interesting. What is unique about this dryad? What's going to make the players remember this session with this random thing that they weren't expecting and that I wasn't expecting?
Yeah. And Drew, for your thing, I do usually write out a list of my own things. I don't usually go in the DMG and pull out a random encounter and say, all right, this is what's happening. I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. Normally I have set in motion like 5 or 6 ideas, and I'll pull a D6 out, and I'll have these 6 things that I'm like, I think this would be an interesting encounter, and one of them's going to happen, and I don't know which one it is. And that's usually, I find that makes the game interesting for me too. The players might think that I had it all planned out, but I secretly rolled that die, and I was like, all right, that's what's going to happen today. And it's just fun for me too, because I'm just like, okay, this is a thing I can do on the fly. That's just part of my style, though. That doesn't mean everybody has to do that. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I think planning everything out and doing it based on the players' reactions is perfectly reasonable too. You don't know what your players are going to do, and I've done it the way that you described a million times at this point, where my players walk into Linnar Mall, go to the Golden Path, and I send people in from different sides that weren't on their planned paths because you guys ended up in a different place than I thought. So in no way is what you said wrong. I just think there's plenty of ways to do it.
I think there's a million ways you could run it. I mean, there's a million different preferences and whatnot. I think specifically coming to trying to mix up your dungeons for your own sake, I think that's fine and that's cool. But my players are going to give me more than enough to have fun with. They're going to do so much that I'm going to have to improv. And I didn't prep the city. It's Billville. Bill lives there. He's the mayor. It's I love that.
Billville.
It's Billville. I came on the spot.
I see. In my head, you had said Billville, like his last name was Ville, and so it's me, Billville, and I'm here. I'm the mayor.
I'm just so good at improv. Look at how much development there was in that town already.
Oh my gosh!
You learned all about all the people that live there.
They call me Little Bill.
Bill lives in this town.
Oh,
jeez. So yeah, I would agree. I think there's a million different ways to do it. Is there anything specific you guys kind of like to, I don't know, sprinkle into your dungeons? Anything, I don't know, unique or something you enjoy?
I do like when bosses have layers or like layer actions.
Okay.
So, for instance, I ran a game a while back. You guys were both in it, I believe. You'll be very familiar with it. But I made the session all about wild magic. And while there wasn't a specific dungeon, you guys had choices to go to different areas, and you had no time to rest. You were on a clock, basically.
That was good.
So, there were a couple of different encounters. I let you guys, choose which path you wanted. You could take the direct path, the path around, the treacherous path, the safe path, and you ended up running in 2 encounters along the way, I believe. One of them was this large wild magic 4-armed giant gorilla with scales.
Oh yeah.
And then past that, you guys went and fought against an adult black dragon, I believe it was.
Yep.
And every 3 rounds in combat, a layer action, or not 3 rounds, every 3 times that a spell was used or cast, a layer action would go off, to which one of the wild magic crystals in the area would go off, and a random spell from the wild magic table would happen, or a random spell effect. And I feel like things like that, things that make your dungeon different than the outside world, are super interesting and super fun. And that's what makes a dungeon special, right? You know, if you go into a dungeon and it has a couple of different charms cast on it, there's specific things limiting you as a character, or even specific buffs you have. Maybe there's less gravity in here for some reason, and you can actually jump 20 feet instead of 5. You know?
That'd be really cool.
Exactly. I just came up with that. Or maybe for some reason in this room, everybody's under the effect of the slow spell, and you don't really know why. You know, like weird things that happen in dungeons like that are so cool. I always love it whenever a dungeon has creative ideas that I never thought of before.
I think that's one of the cooler aspects of dungeons is you can do some different stuff with them that makes them interesting. If you walk into a town, you know, and there's something weird going on, it's more of like this is something we need to do. It's like a plot. Dungeons, there doesn't have to be a reason. You know, there could be things randomly combusting into flames into the dungeon. You have no idea why. You don't even have to give them an answer as a DM. It's just happening because that's what happens in this dungeon. You don't know why.
Usually there should be a justified reason, I think. Like, usually the reason I have is, in the DMG you can or if a wizard spends enough time, you know, casting a spell in this area and focusing it, they can enchant a room or something, or they can enchant an object. So usually that's my justification, is like, the wizard spent a lot of time on this, you know?
But you don't necessarily have to give the players that answer.
Exactly. But it has to make legitimate sense, usually, in my head.
Yeah, well, again, don't love the randomness of random encounters, but I do like the whimsical nature.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess the ceiling's crushing down and there's fire coming out of the walls. Okay.
Must be an ancient dwarven mechanism.
Must
the
be.
Dwemer.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's how I think of it. I'm like, oh yeah, those dwarves from the past were way smarter than these normal now-time dwarves.
But none of them are smarter than Oswald.
Well, we went a lot longer on dungeons than I thought we would. So any final thoughts you guys have for this episode?
This was a good episode. I need more dragons next time.
Yeah, some dragons for our dungeons. Thank you guys so much for listening to Table Talk Friday. Please follow us on whatever podcast service you prefer and share us to whatever social media services that you happen to be on. Please, and also, we have our email in the description here. Write into the show, ask any questions, give us comments, suggestions, what you would like to see from us in the coming days. And character, take us out.
I love you.
Hello, thank you for listening to Table Talk Friday. For more adventures, check us out at your favorite podcast service. If you have any questions about our travels, you can please send us a sending spell at tabletalkfriday@gmail.com. And otherwise, feel free to stop by next Friday for our next episode. And I hope you have a nice rest of your day.